Hello and welcome to another Read With Me session. I'm yours truly, Isabel Bedell, and I'm here to read with you some really awesome facts that we found in this particular book. We are currently reading How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age by none other than Dale Carnegie. This book is a must if you want to really have a fundamental understanding of the key essentials to connecting with people. And the reason why I chose this book is because we do live in the information age, in the digital age, where so much information is available, and there's so many people in the world that feel like they know things, but some don't act upon the things that they know. They go with reaction, they go with what so and so said, or they go with some random Twitter post, or they go with some random post that so and so did because so and so heard it from so and so. So because we live in the digital age, we have to go back to the fundamentals of actually connecting with one another as if we were, back in the day, before technology. And one of the awesomest ways that Dale Carnegie really connects us is just remembering. Okay, it's not a matter of like learning new things per se. It's more like once you read this book, you remember all the fundamentals that we were taught as children. And because we are all, grown-ups or children or however you want to call ourselves, it's imperative that we remember, right? Now more than ever. So if you're a business owner, if you're a leader, if you are looking to expand your knowledge, your information, your awareness, your credibility, everything, okay? Both soft skills, hard skills, all of that, now is the time to do so. And I'm so excited for you to be here because in this particular video, I'm going to just run through the 10 different ways that Dale Carnegie mentions in part 3 of this book, which is part 3 is how to merit and maintain others' trust. So if you know, okay, trust is one of the most important things in life. It's so hard to gain someone's trust or a reputation, but it's so easy to break it, to lose it, if you're not careful on your actions, if you're not careful on how you speak to others, if you're not careful on how to engage with others, okay? And in part 3, how to merit and maintain others' trust, there's so many really great nuggets that I'm going to dive into. Now, there's 10 amazing things that Dale Carnegie mentions within part 3, which is number 1, avoid arguments. Okay, that's a must. Okay, number 2, never say you're wrong. No, number 3 is admit faults quickly and emphatically. Okay, number 4, begin in a friendly way. Number 5, access affinity. Number 6, surrender the credit. Number 7, engage with empathy. Number 8, appeal to noble motives. Number 9, it is share your journey. And then number 10, throw down a challenge. Okay, throw down a challenge. And what I am planning to do with this particular set of amazing ways to not only maintain others' trust is that we're going to split these chapters up, okay? So let's start with number 1, okay? Avoid arguments. I want to cover some of my notes here because it's really important to, as I mentioned, to remember certain things. And he mentioned in this book, he has a quote. He's like, my mother always said, 2 people can't fight if one person doesn't want to. Let me repeat that. My mother always said, 2 people can't fight if one person doesn't want to. Okay. Have you ever, had an argument with a friend, a colleague, a spouse, a brother or sister, and like you want to get to the bottom of it, but maybe that other person is like completely over it. They're like, I'm not even gonna bother. This is so, I'm not gonna deal with that. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it isn't. But what he's also mentioning is that if we can see interactions, okay, clearly, despite the tension and the conflict, there's little you can't accomplish in collaboration with others. Okay, he mentions also, all of us know how to get attention, but few of us know how to get attention and respect at the same time. You got to set yourself apart by being one who avoids the arguments that most jump into both feet. So, with that in mind, how important is it for you to win an argument? Are you the type to start a debate and you have to win? Like you have to be the one that ends the conversation. Have you ever been in that situation where you start having an argument with someone, whether you start it or the other person started it, but you feel like you need to have the last say? There's so many funny like videos on TikTok or like Instagram Reels that is like the person is, mad at their spouse or whatever, and then they're still cooking for one another, but none of them has the, the strength to be like, or I wouldn't even call it strength. I would call it selflessness or the empathy side of them to say, you know what, it doesn't even matter. Let's talk about this. Let's be adults. Let's have a conversation. Let's write it down. Let's go over what just happened. Sometimes, yes, we all need some space, but sometimes it's better to avoid going into the direction of an argument and really just focus on the solution here. Focus on what needs to happen within one another, understand each other for a second, listen to one another, understand where that person is coming from, and really getting into, hey, maybe we can do this better. Maybe we can try this out. I know it's hard sometimes, but it's a commitment. If you're in a relationship, if you're, married, if you're with your significant other, sometimes you will have an argument. Sometimes you will have these moments of like, for real, you don't get that? But it's in those moments where you can see that other person, or you can actually stand up and show your level of leadership and your level of awareness, where now that person can really see where you're coming from, or maybe you can share where it is that you're coming from. Maybe it happens that, instant, or maybe you need a couple of days or a couple of moments to, recalibrate, but it's always a great way to connect. Okay, which goes into the next point here, which is number 2. And then Carnegie's mentioning, never say you're wrong. Okay, never ever say that, especially when you're dealing with someone that is sensitive, or when you're dealing with someone that you respect them, or that actually just anyone really. Whenever you say that you're wrong, and this is what Dale Carnegie says, is you start from a place of negativity, okay, instead of a place of positivity. And I'm going to read a couple of the quotes here because it's so important. If we just take this moment and really just shift things, you will always win, okay? You will always win friends and influence people. So he mentions here, we think we know something, or in the workplace, because there's an expectation that we should know something. This expectation of knowledge tends to work against us in interactions because it closes off our minds to the possibilities that exist outside the knowledge we bring to the table. And in all effective problem solving, collaboration, and dispute resolutions, all of that jazz, it begins with an emptying of the mind. What we know or what we think we should know. Okay. Have you ever felt like someone asks you something and then, or someone asks you something and then you feel the need to be right, or you feel the need to have an answer for everything? This is what Dale Carnegie is mentioning. He's like, listen, it's okay not to have the answers all at once. You don't need to know everything. In fact, it's actually better if you don't know something, because it gives the other person an opportunity to see you as a real human being, right? Because sometimes if you are always the one just like spitting out the solution, spitting out what it is that you know, okay, or even worse, spitting out things that you think you know because you've heard it from so and so and whatever, that's not real facts, that's not real data. And then it just gets so like washed with all the crap that's out there, and then that person feels let down. Okay, have you ever felt let down from that point of view, where like you go up to someone, and this happened to me so many times, and I'll share with you a quick story. Like last year we were living in Mexico, and for the entire year, which was awesome. And I decided, hey, my wife Vanessa, her mom is Mexican, and she's American, and by birthright she's able to get her Mexican citizenship. So I was like, would you like to get your dual citizenship? It's not like you need it, but would you like to do it? It's a process, but would you like to do it? She's, yeah, let's do it. Perfect. So that whole entire process is a lot. You have to get birth certificates, you have to get you have to go to different offices to get certain documents and get them stamped and get them approved and get them translated and get them filed and get them put into the system and create this whole thing. So in the process of that, you're talking to a lot of people, and in that process people think that they know what is going on, when in reality they don't. So I learned very quickly that in order for me to get an answer from someone that's actually a legitimate answer, I needed to question 3 to 4 different people in the same department sometimes to get one straightforward answer, which was ridiculous. And that was the most frustrating thing in the world, because I don't like to just go around in circles or waste time. I like to get to the point. So think of the moments when, you say things like, oh, you're wrong, or, someone asks you something and then you feel the need to answer because you think that you know the answer, but you're not 100% sure that that's the real answer. It's better if you say, actually, I don't know the answer. I can help you find the answer, but I'm not 100% confident that I know the answer. That will give that person a better understanding of where you are, versus giving them a false information, which is, I believe, even worse. Okay. Now, another awesome, just very quickly, this is a good one, just summarizing what we just spoke on. It could feel incredibly unnatural, okay, because we've actually been trained to demonstrate what we think, to show our knowledge, our smarts, and we think before we talk sometimes, right? So by approaching a conversation with a blank slate. We take a humbler and more honest approach. We acknowledge the possibility that we may not know all the facts and that we may not, in fact, be the only one who is right. And better yet, we create the possibility for meaningful experiences and collaboration. So our thoughts, our ideas, they turn into something greater than the sum of 0 and 0. Think about that. Next time you're going into trying to figure out something, or someone comes up to you with a question and internally you're like, I'm not 100% sure. Practice saying, actually, I'm not 100% sure, but I can help you get that answer. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, people probably treat you and trust you more because you were able to be honest with them, okay? Number 3. This is going to be a really, really good one because this is something that I feel is an ego-driven motive for many people. And I feel like regardless of the gender that you identify as, this is something that I feel could be a discussion that we have more openly, because now more than ever, it's very important to have. And number 3 is having the ability to actually say that you admit fault, okay? Sometimes that is the most difficult thing to do. Admitting when you're wrong. Admitting faults quickly. That is sometimes the biggest thing that is really, really intense for a lot of people. Why? Well, because it's not easy, okay? No one likes to say, oh, I'm wrong, or I did something wrong, On the contrary, people are always looking for praise. And when we're just looking for praise, looking for praise and always receiving praise, there's no room for learning, right? So there are many things that are common to us all, like birth, death, and even a lifetime full of mistakes. And we all know this, okay? The vast majority of our mistakes, while temporarily frustrating and even maddening to others, are forgivable. Dale Carnegie mentions. He's like, so why then do we have such a hard time admitting them? Why do we have such a hard time admitting when we're wrong? Why is that? I would love to hear from you what your thoughts are on why do we have such a hard time admitting when we are wrong. Okay. He mentions also a story about Tiger Woods and when he had his whole ordeal and everything was going on with Tiger, and like how the way that it was handled, it wasn't the right way of handling it, because he lost a lot of his trust, his credibility, his reputation, all like that. But what happened is he was able to rebuild himself over the years. So what he's mentioning here, and he just goes back to that moment, he's like, Tiger should have humanized the brand using social media outlets, specifically with Twitter, or even a real-time raw video where his Facebook presence may have a polished and promotional tonality, but it actually, him showing up to that page or that source, it can actually allow the fans, allow the people to understand what actually is happening with that person. And now more than ever, authenticity and rawness is so important. That's why I'm literally trying to create these videos without any type of crazy production. I'm trying to keep it as real, raw as possible. And one of those ways that I'm really just looking at these things is I'm trying to go with my own flow. I'm not putting so much pressure on myself to create this whole production. I'm actually just speaking as I'm learning. So whatever I'm learning, I can cement it within myself, and I can be a better leader. I can be a better spouse. I can be a better sister, daughter, everything, better human being. Okay. Because that's one of the most important things to me, right? Is growth, evolution, constantly improving. If I can be 1% better than I was yesterday, I know that I'm heading in the right direction. So he mentions, he's like, when we recognize and admit our errors, the response from others is typically forgiveness and generosity. Quickly, the error is diminished in their eyes. It is only when we shrink responsibility or refuse to admit our errors immediately that we raise the eerie of those around us, and the original misjudgment seems to grow in importance and negative effect. Isn't that true? Okay. As soon as like something's off and that person denies it, or that person is not willing to admit their faults, I mean, you lose complete trust with them. But going back to the previous note that we were talking about, if you're able to say to someone, hey, I actually don't know the answer, or I'm not clear on it, it completely changes that whole scenario. Okay. And even if you're like a thought leader, I feel like back in the day, when we first got into like organic lead generation, and we had a huge team of like 35 people, and we were doing services for others, and their results were driven by us, by our activity that we're putting in their accounts every day. They would come to us and they would ask questions like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? And I was bombarded with so many questions, and I put this responsibility upon myself to always have the right answer, or like always respond back as soon as possible, or not have any set of boundaries. And that really burnt me out. That really set the wrong intention for my clients. And it also set the wrong intention for me, right? Because I was always on defense. I was always in a reaction mode versus looking at the situation, taking a step back, not needing to respond right away, but rather look at what's going on, put together everything that's embodying all of that, and then respond back with an actual answer that was even more factual than how I responded it back in the day. And I look at those moments and I'm like, wow, what a great lesson did I learn from that, because I don't need to know everything. And when we feel like we need to know everything, we quickly diminish the credibility within ourselves. Okay. So something that was really, really powerful that he also mentions in this particular section here is another story that he mentioned in this chapter. He was talking about this lady that, when she went on a business trip, she had a moment where late at night she was with her coworkers and they were drinking at a bar, and when this guy and her went back to the hotel room, or the hotel, she and him stopped in front of her door, okay, and had a moment where they actually kissed. Now, both of them are married, both of them are happily married, and they love their spouses. But in that moment, I don't know, maybe it was blame it on the alcohol or whatever it is that you want to call it. They kissed. Nothing happened after that. She went into her room, the guy went into his room, and nothing happened. But that stayed with her. And it bothered her for a really long time. The years passed and the memory was locked away in like this emotional safe she had. And then Dale Carnegie was mentioning that she discovered the truth. And when she was able to discover the truth, she actually confessed to her husband like years later and was like, hey, this happened, but nothing happened after that. And because she held that for so long, it hurt the husband so much, because like if it didn't mean anything, you could have just said it, even though, it's kind of like ripping the band-aid right then and there. You could have just said it, we could have dealt with it, and we could have, moved on from that. But because now you're just bringing this up after years and years and years of just storing it in this emotional safe place, now that becomes a problem. So what Dale Carnegie is mentioning is that when she did discover the truth of why it's a big deal to just keep it to herself and not share it, she's like, Anne's mistake, Anne was a lady, it was not without consequences, but in admitting the mistake and seeking forgiveness. And she allowed room for a different perspective on her life, and a perspective in which she was saved for being imperfect. And if only she had given herself room 6 years sooner. So, because sometimes we're like trying to be all this perfect person where like nothing that we do is bad. And sometimes we don't want to admit our faults or admit our wrongdoings. We might store things. We might not admit things. But what Dale Carnegie is again mentioning here is that if you had only just given yourself that gift of admitting that fault sooner, you could have been released from that thought or that emotion a lot sooner. So I'm going to conclude this video on that note, and then we're going to start the next videos for chapter 4, which is begin in a friendly way. And I want you to really take a look at what we just discussed, because they're all very, very important points. So we talked about avoiding arguments. We said, hey, never say that you're wrong with someone, okay? And then admit fault quickly. Admit faults quickly. Those 3 are so essential. And if you can gather the information from this video and you can just take a moment to reflect, I promise you, it's going to change the perspective. It's going to change the neurons in your brain. Sometimes I like to personally just write things out before I say them. And then I'm like, oh, okay, now that it's out of my head, now it's onto paper. Now I can look at the paper and be detached from it. Sometimes it has happened where like I'm feeling some kind of way, I'm feeling an emotion, and then I just take a moment, I just journal or I write out exactly what I'm thinking in my mind, okay, without judging myself while I'm writing. And then I'm able to just close the journal and let it sit for maybe a day or two. And then after a day or two, I can look back at the journal entry and I can look at how I was feeling, but not necessarily in a bad way, but in a good way. If I'm looking to admit a fault, or maybe I haven't said the right thing, now I processed all of that and now I'm able to deliver it with a better attitude, with a better understanding, with a better perspective, awareness, right? So take a moment, take a step back from all the craziness in the world, right? We all have things going on in our lives. Gift yourself the opportunity to really take in what's going on. Really allow yourself to feel, really allow yourself to just bring in to perspective things that really matter, okay? In the next video, we're going to be talking about beginning in a friendly way, accessing affinity, surrendering the credit, engaging in empathy, appealing to noble motives, sharing your journey with others, and how to throw down a challenge, because it is the key ways to entrusting and making sure that you maintain the trust with those you love, that you care about, that you respect. So I'm excited for that. And thanks for being on this channel. If you enjoyed this message, if you got something that, turned on, or something like kind of clicked, make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one where we go over more of this juiciness. See you later. Bye.